Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I got to tell you, I say this every single program that I'm excited about our guest, very special guest, and it's true every single program, and especially when I have a returning guest like Howard Bloom. And we're going to talk a little about, of course, the case of the sexual cosmos, get a little definition. I'm going to tell you about a website called howardbloom.institute. I like that. I think I'm a reverend. I'm a doctor. I want to be an institute. Howard, it is great to have you back again.
It's wonderful to see you again, Richard. I enjoy the fact that we've seen each other several times now.
I watched your documentary. I was intrigued by your lifestyle, primarily how they filmed you sleeping, getting up in the morning, doing your exercises, taking your pills, whatever they are, then getting yourself dressed and all of the stuff that you put in your pockets that you want to make sure you have with you and so forth, and just following you throughout your day. Was that at all disconcerting for you in any way, shape, or form, or was like, yeah, they're here, it's no big deal?
I don't look like an athlete. So when I'm there with only my underwear on and doing my exercises, they look absolutely silly. In those days, I was doing 1,250 push-ups a morning. And they came to shoot me twice in the morning, doing my push-ups with only my underwear on. And then they came to me, you could see that they had a very hard time doing this, saying, Howard, we have bad news for you. Your push-ups aren't push-ups. So I had my gorgeous Asian house guest shoot me with her iPhone, doing my push-ups in the morning. And sure enough, they are not push-ups. My body had invented a whole new thing without ever telling me. And I vibrate up and down in midair, but my elbows never bend.
Right.
I didn't know I was doing this. It took the film to show me that I was doing this. But so there were some awkward moments.
Yeah, but there have to be some benefits to the exercise that you were doing, regardless of the name that it's called.
Right. Well, I call it vibrational planking, and most people think it's a big deal if they can plank for I don't know how many minutes. And I'm planking for, well, at this point, because I had some health emergencies, I'm only able to do 400 of these vibrational plankings a morning. But that's a lot more planking than most people would put in. And it's vibrational, so it's got to be of some value.
It's like, well, I'm watching him doing this. Okay, I know that they're not push-ups of the traditional type, but apparently he's enjoying it. He's feeling good when he does them. It finds a certain level of accomplishment and satisfaction. And I'm sure there's a physiological and biochemical reaction as well in this process to what he's doing. And we all have to find our own way, right?
Well, also, there is a psychological benefit. I was something like 77 when that film was shot. I'm 82 now. So, and I had these three major health emergencies between last November and the spring. And so doing those push-ups tells me you are not old. No
Mm.
old man could do 400 of these things. And to get revenge against the three health crises, instead of walking 6 miles a day, which is my norm, I started walking 8 miles a day. And that was just to give the middle finger to age. Uh, so I refuse to be 82.
Well, I'm 65 and I still am having fun doing what I'm doing now that we've moved into our new home. And of course, it's an old house. It was built in 79, 1979, not 1879. Uh, I get a great deal of satisfaction physically and mentally at taking on all of these little projects along the way. Fix this little cabinet here, gotta tighten up the this over here, and the list goes on of just little things, nothing major,
Right,
and that it's our place, it's our space. Now, you live in an apartment in New York City, correct?
right. But I own the building.
But you own the building,
Right,
so it's yours. Okay,
right.
you're not paying rent.
No, and I have three tenants who are kind enough to pay me rent.
There you go. Well, like I said, I was sharing with you earlier, I've been in New York City once, and that was in 1993, which was a long time ago. And but I loved it. I still remember finding my wife and my best friend and I found ourselves standing in front of the fountain that you see in the opening and closing credits of the Odd Couple television series
Right.
with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, and then looking off to the west and seeing a massive number of people heading our way. Well, the reason? Because we were in Central Park on Earth Day
Ah,
1993.
amazing.
What's that like for you living in a city that, as they say, never sleeps? Because obviously you take time to rest yourself, but at the same time, I'm guessing the city of New York must energize you in some fashion because that's why you stay.
Tremendously. Buffalo, New York, where I was born and raised, was a place that never had a place for me. Um, there was no, my parents had no time for me. Other kids didn't want to have anything to do with me. I found a place at the university. My headmaster was kind enough to arrange for me to take a class in philosophy at the age of 16 at the University of Buffalo, but it wasn't enough. And I lived in Seattle, San Diego, and LA. And there's only one place I've found on earth. Look, I've traveled to Moscow and to Seoul, Korea, and to Kobe in Japan. And there's only one place on earth where I feel at home, and it's New York City because
Mm.
I'm an oddball, and this is a city of talented oddballs. And it's talented oddballs who provide an awful lot, well, statistically, who provide a very disproportionate amount of the gross domestic product of the United States. Um, and plus, I'm not in Manhattan. In Manhattan, there's constant noise at night, all night long. It's very hard um, to keep your home from having that noise.
Mm.
It's very hard to soundproof your home. Out here, it's like a village. This is Park Slope, Brooklyn, and I have a 570-acre park, which is absolutely gorgeous and the most phenomenal park ever designed by a human being. It was designed by Frederick Olmsted, who ironically designed the park across the street from my house in Buffalo when I was growing up. But this is his masterpiece, Prospect Park. So I walk in the park 8 miles a day, and it is wonderful. And I work my tail off while I'm doing it. I either, well, this is not work. I talk to my girlfriend for an hour or more. I'm listening right now to the audio version of The Case of the Sexual Cosmos, Everything You Know About Nature is Wrong, my latest book, to see how many glitches and errors there are in it. But I never take the time out to uh, go back to my old books, and this is giving me the time to see how effectively my writing style works, and of course the ideas in the book, which I think are profoundly powerful and very, very necessary, for us to know. So New York is home to me. It's the only place I've ever felt at home, and it invigorates me. When you are in New York, when you've made the choice to live in New York, you've made the choice to go into the jet stream of human life, because there are only 5 cities that really move our culture and our civilization forward. And there are Tokyo, LA, New York City, London, and Paris. And if you live in one of those, you are in an intense competition with others who are the best of their kind in what they do and who do the kind of work that will influence the national culture, and the international culture. And I thrive in that highly intense, competitive environment of talents
Mm.
and people with brains, people it's fun to talk to and fun to compete with.
Well, I live close to one of them, as close as San Bernardino,
Right,
when I'm not up here in Twin Peaks, enjoying the life that we have here. I don't know how well I might do actually quite well in Los Angeles or New York or Tokyo or Paris or London, although Dublin kind of has my fancy or anywhere.
aha,
Someone asked me where in Ireland would you like to live, Richard? Because that's where we'd love to land
right,
permanently. And I'd say, well, it doesn't matter where, as long as I'm on the island. As long as I'm living in Ireland amongst the Irish, uh, you know, it could be right next to the Waterford glass factory or
right,
somewhere in Limerick or up in Galway, and one of these wonderful places that we stayed at back in 2004, on Inishni, I think was the name of the island, which was really weird because the only reason it was an island was because they somehow had manufactured a bog road that allowed you to get to the island. It was really very cool. But to live in that kind of energy, I know for a lot of folks, it's not easy, but then for a lot of folks, it is, and they need and want that charge. It's like plugging yourself in to the energy of the earth, and that's kind of what the case of the sexual cosmos is about, which we're going to talk about with Howard Bloom and howardbloom.institute here on Tell Me Your Story. You're wondering about the title of the book, aren't you? The Case of the Sexual Cosmos. All right, so we'll go to the author, and his name is Howard Bloom. And Howard never really thought of the cosmos in that context. Where did the title come from, and why is it a sexual cosmos as opposed to just your run of the mill cosmos?
right. Well, when the idea came to me, I was having lunch with a very prominent editor, and my I had managers at that point who were hoping to get me a publishing deal with this guy. And he wanted to hear ideas. And one of the ideas I came up with is it is not humans who are materialist, consumerist, and flash with vain display. It is the cosmos that does that. The cosmos is materialist from 380,000 years after the Big Bang onward, because in 380,000 years after the Big Bang, the first atoms emerged, and those atoms discovered that they were drawn by a subtle force that had never been seen in the universe before. It's gravity. And they were drawn together in gravity balls, and those gravity balls competed with each other. And the bigger always won by swallowing the smaller one. which bulked the bigger one up a little bit more. So the next time it had a showdown with another gravity ball, it could win. And this is materialism. What were these gravity balls gathering so that they could be winners in the competition of what I call the Great Gravity Crusades? They were gathering material stuff. They were gathering matter. And ultimately, the biggest gravity balls became black holes, suns, planets, and moons. So when you walk out of your house today, or even when you're walking in the house, you and I are walking on a great big gravity ball that was a winner in the Great Gravity Crusades. And how did it win? Materialism. So I proposed to him a book called The Case of the Consumerist Cosmos, because I could also see consumerism in this cosmos long before there were human beings. But as I went, I realized something. There are two basic rules in science that you must obey to be a scientist. One is called the law of least effort, that nature always takes the shortest path between 2 points. And the other is the second law of thermodynamics, that entropy in the universe is always increasing toward a maximum. What does that mean? Well, entropy is disorder. Entropy is random order. Entropy is a random mist. In other words, the universe is always breaking down into a random mist. That is the opposite of the nature that we actually see. That second law of thermodynamics doesn't work. Why? Because you start with a Big Bang, which is an astonishing supersized surprise, material miracle. From that, in the first 10 to the minus 30 seconds of a second of the Big Bang, come the first particles, quarks, and quarks get together in protons and neutrons. Protons and neutrons, 380,000 years later, get together in atoms. Atoms get together in gravity balls. Gravity balls become solar systems and galaxies, and so on. The universe is constantly moving up. Never is it doing what the entropists, the second law of thermodynamics fans, say it's doing. It is not breaking down toward heat death. And I tell you the story of how we got these horrible ideas of the second law of thermodynamics and entropy at the end of the book, because they're the enemies. And what I realized in thinking this through was, there is something in this universe that so far defies taking the shortest line between 2 points, the law of least effort, and the law of entropy. Things are always breaking down into a random mist, that it's ridiculous. And that is sex. Sex is such an incredibly complex process that even the experts can't remember all of its bits and pieces. Sex takes a 78 billion atom long molecule, a molecule that you could, if you could reach into one of your cells and grab your genetic material and spread it out in front of yourself, it would span 3 feet. If you took all of the genomes in all of your 100 trillion cells and stretched them out and tied them end to end, they would go to the sun and back something like 28 times. Just the genes in you would do that. That is not a law of least effort. That is a law of ultimate complexity. So I came up in opposition to the second law of thermodynamics with the first law of flamboyance, which is that the universe doesn't fall apart, she falls together. And whenever she falls together, she makes something occasionally startlingly new. And the universe is moving up. It's like this. And I will have to save this image for the next book because I didn't get it in this one. But remember your first slinky?
Yeah.
You put it at the top of the staircase, you gave it a slight nudge, and it went down every single stair until it reached the bottom, making this gorgeous metal noise as it went.
Yeah.
But the universe, according to the second law of thermodynamics, that's the universe, constantly moving downward until it reaches the bottom. But in reality, if you use your iPhone and take a picture of that Slinky going down the staircase, then run it in reverse. That's what our universe does, constantly climbing a ladder of flamboyance, a ladder of amazing new structures, of supersized surprises, of what are called in science emergent properties, from atoms to gravity balls, from gravity balls to galaxies, from galaxies to stars and planets, and so on and so forth. The most amazing part is when it went from complex molecules to life. That is stunningly astonishing, and it is not a move down, it is a move up in complexity. It is not a move toward disorder, it is the very opposite. It's creating an order of a kind that's unbelievable,
It,
absolutely stunning.
yeah. Is it safe to say, or is it fair to say that how you are describing this and putting this into this context is all a matter of perception? I mean, when you talk about, they talk about chaos, to order and order to chaos, that kind of thing. Is like, no, it is what it is. Now, we as human beings, we're the ones that are going to lay the words, and the words will have definitions so that we can share this concept with other people. But isn't it really a matter of perception in that regard, as opposed to what some might conceive of as an absolute truth? This is the truth of the universe, that there was a Big Bang, or that God created on the first day and the second day and so forth. Is that where we're kind of coming from? How do you define that? Because I do understand what you're saying, that just because I'm watching asteroids flying all over the place, we'll say we're watching the Perseid meteor shower, all right? And some would say, well, there's a lot of chaos going on there. No, it's actually the universe just doing what the universe does.
Right. And it's highly ordered. It's not random. It's not a random mist by any stretch of the imagination. If it were a random mist, we wouldn't see it splashing into the sky and doing these incredible flares of shooting stars. Um, so, yes, everything that humans do is a matter of perception. And yes, every civilization picks its own perceptual system, and works within it. But this science requires verification, by experiment. And there are between 10,000 and 100,000 papers in science validating the view that I just gave you.
Hmm.
Now, look, that doesn't mean it can't be overturned in 30 years. I was having a discussion with two scientists, and I gave them my description of the first 380,000 years of the universe. And then one of them said, with his jaw hanging, do you really believe that? Because he doesn't believe in the Big Bang. He doesn't
Ah,
believe in Big Bang theory. So, yes, these are perceptions and they're up for debate. But all the evidence indicates that what I just described, a universe that's going up a staircase, is not really a matter of perception. It's proven by everything we know about the evolution of the universe, the evolution of the cosmos, right up to you and me having this conversation.
well, I do have to say that to me, it's fascinating to be the observer, be one of many of the observers, who is, in one sense, trying to understand his place in the universe,
Right,
and if in fact I have a place in that. I look at I look at it from the standpoint in this regard. What you and I are talking about right now, wonderful thing. Folks are going to be able to hear it for years to come. But in millennia to come, none of what we have to say here is going to amount to a hill of beans. Nor will there be anybody to maybe even remember you or I, or let alone what we said,
right.
because in the grand scheme of things, you and I, we're here for less than a puff of smoke.
Well, let me tell you a story because
Okay,
I think
please.
I see things differently. When I was 10 years old, I might have told you the story before. I was a lost child. My parents didn't want to have anything to do with me, and other kids didn't want to have anything to do with me. And one day, a book appeared in my lap. And you know how you know every book in your house because your parents have always kept them in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't moved since you were born.
Right.
Well, this is a book that had never been on a bookshelf in my house. I don't know where it came from. And I opened it and said, the first two laws of science are these: the truth at any price, including the price of your life. And it gave the example of Galileo. And look at things right under your nose as if you've never seen them before. Look at things that you and everybody else around you take for granted, just including assumptions. And look at them from a totally different point of view, and then proceed from there. And it gave the example of Anton von Leeuwenhoek, the inventor of the microscope, who looked at a puddle with his magnifying lens and discovered, to his shock and astonishment, that we were sharing a planet with what he called animalcules, these little microscopic beasts who affect our lives, but we had never seen before. And so, two guys, and I suddenly felt I had a home in this thing called science.
Mm.
I suddenly found I had a place. Two guys, Galileo and Anton von Leeuwenhoek, had reached across a gap of 350 years to save me. So my task in life has been to reach across the next 350 years and save the next lost child down the line.
Mm.
And that's what my books are for. And that's what the Howard Bloom Institute is for. And the Howard Bloom Institute is creating a Bloombot. I'm 82, you know, I'm going to have a limited amount of time on this planet, hopefully enough to write my next two books. But when I'm gone, the Bloombot will be there so people can still talk to me, so it can still think out new things, because it's learning to think the way that I do, which turns out for something based on ChatGPT is very, very hard. But we are making it do it anyway.
You know,
So
yeah.
my whole goal is 350 years down the line.
Well, we'll do what we can to play our part in all of that as we continue talking with Howard Bloom, howardbloom.institute. The Case of the Sexual Cosmos, the title of the book. Get yourself a copy. We already know that it's available in Audible format, and we'll continue talking about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Howard, it's interesting how you made reference to these microbes and so forth. And I actually made the comment, and I tried to keep it lighthearted as best I could because I know that a lot of folks are sensitive about it. And that is, did anybody ever make an attempt to communicate with that which we called the coronavirus or COVID 19? Because I'm sitting here thinking there's got to be some consciousness in there somewhere. And it makes me think of course, Dr. Seuss and Horton
Right,
Hears a Who,
right,
you know? Because just because we are the size that we are doesn't mean that we're the only sentient beings in the universe. There may be those who are bigger. We haven't seen
right,
them yet, and smaller.
right,
I often wonder about that in terms of, we're always pointing our electron mic, or our, not electron, but our telescopes or our what have you, or microphones. We're pointing them out towards
right,
the universe, right? Trying to hear, is somebody calling? Is somebody
right.
calling? I gave them the number. They can call, collect, what have you. And yet we may have those uh, sentient beings already here, but they're smaller than us.
Well, here, this may please you. In the 1990s, when I was stuck for 15 years in a bed with a serious illness, um, I put together the International Paleopsychology Project, and it included a range of scientists from all over the world. And one of them was Eshel Ben Jacob from Israel. And Eshel was the head of the condensed matter physics department at the University of Tel Aviv. He was also the head of the Society of Israeli Physicists. And when he and his wife came to visit me, there I was laying in a bed. And this can only happen in New York. Only in New York will people be coming through your town and come out to see you in a brownstone in Park Slope. And Eschel's wife said, "Do you have the copy or do you have the latest Scientific American?" And I did, but it was turned to the table of contents so I could circle the articles that I wanted to pay attention to. And so I said, "Yes, it's here under my left thigh." And she said, "Well, get it out and turn it to the cover." Well, I turned to the cover, and there was a picture of a bacterial colony that Eschel had taken on the cover of the Scientific American. And there was a feature inside about Eschel's work on bacteria. And what was Eschel working on? He was working on a number of things with bacteria, but one of his main discoveries is bacteria communicate with each other. And you got to remember, bacteria are your ancestors and mine. They were doing for life the things that it would take to eventually make you and me. And our bacterial legacy is inside of us. Not only do we have 100 trillion of the minimum of those bacteria and maximum, well, no, 100 trillion is about the maximum, but we have those bacterial colonies in our guts. You and I can't really eat most of the food we're eating. We can't digest it. We're handing it off to the bacteria in our gut who digest it for us and who excrete the stuff we really need, glucose in particular, not to mention a whole bunch of vitamins which they manufacture for us. Now, the point here is these bacteria are communicating like 10 million people in a city, except there are 10 billion in a colony, all communicating with each other. And the result is a social intelligence, a group IQ among the bacteria, an IQ that's higher than the processing powers of any individual bacterium, and a processing power that leads periodically to the bacteria re-engineering their genome when they run into a problem or a new opportunity. So they can communicate to each other. This line of thought was snuffed out for the last 20 years. And there's another woman working on this, Bonnie Bessler, who came up with the idea of quorum sensing. That is, if pneumonia bacteria enter your system, they at first just go about bulking up and eating everything they can inside of you. But when they reach a certain point, it's as if they have an internal census mechanism to tell them how many of us are there. And once there are enough, they change their way of life entirely. And they start attacking you with pneumonia. So they have a quorum, what Bonnie Bessler calls a quorum sensing mechanism. That's a communicative mechanism. And when we are trying to destroy bacteria, we now know that what we're doing is trying to understand the language of the bacteria. In what way? We're trying to find, for example, in the COVID virus, which is not a bacteria, but it's another microorganism. So in the COVID virus mechanism, we're trying to find the method it uses to communicate with our cells in order to open those cells up and take them over. That takes communication. That takes understanding the language of the bacteria or of the bacteria that you want to eat, or just understanding the language of your system and my system in general. So even viruses have to learn how to communicate with us, even if their goal is to destroy us and to eat us.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that example forward because, once again, I want to share this and it may upset some folks who might be listening around breakfast, lunch, or dinner time. You used the term consumerism long before humans were ever on the planet.
Yep.
And how can I put this? I'm going to use a tree as an example.
Okay.
All right. Trying to keep it as family friendly as possible here.
Right.
A tree ostensibly takes in carbon dioxide. That is what it consumes.
Right.
All right. That's part of its consumerism.
Right.
What it excretes, that's the term we use, that it
Right.
excretes,
Right.
is the very thing that we need to stay alive, and that's oxygen. We
Yep.
inhale it through our noses and mouths. Now,
Right.
again, forgive me for being overly graphic, but there are organisms that facilitate our excretions. And then there are organisms we might call certain kinds of tiny little fish that do the same thing with, say, the dolphins and the sharks and the whales. And again, going back to your example of the bacterium and so forth. So this again, it's all a matter of the words that we have chosen that makes it a little unpalatable to even think that we are inhaling the excrement from trees. We would
Well,
never phrase it that way.
I would not think of it as the excrement.
No,
It's
no, no. But you see
yeah.
my point.
Yes, and in a way you could say that. But here's how trees are the ultimate consumerists.
Okay.
Um, Once upon a time, the highest plants on the land were only a foot high. And even that was a major space program, going a foot high. Because compared to the size of a cell, that's like going 23,000 miles into the sky. Um, and then came a plant with a radically different approach. Lignin and cellulose had just been invented by the materials engineering of plants. So the tree became massively materialistic. It used unheard of before amounts of lignin and cellulose, and it built something that went against every law of nature, that showed its moxie, its spunk, its rebelliousness. Um, Nature's most basic law is gravity. In getting 2 feet high, the previous plants had given a big, again, middle finger to gravity, which means to nature's most basic law, to nature
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Now the tree took this lignin and cellulose stuff and built a, a skyscraper, built something that defied gravity and nature utterly, and went 70 or 170 feet high. Why was it doing this? Because the plants on the ground were competing with each other for sunlight.
Mm.
And the tree took an entirely different approach to competing for sunlight. It raised itself so high that it could catch the sun before the sun ever got to its competitors, literally leaving its competitors in the shade. To do that, it took this massive materialist stuff of a trunk. And today, the most common bio substance on Earth is the stuff of trees, because trees have been here for 310,000 years. I have 310 million years.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Now, and an awful lot of tree trunks have accumulated in the soil of the earth. But the tree went beyond that. It was not only materialistic, it was consumerist. Now, how in the world, Bloom, can you call a mere tree a consumerist? After all, trees are the epitome of nature. They are the very logo of nature. So what are you talking about? Well, a tree, an average tree, puts out 220,000 leaves per season. Per season. Then what does it do at the end of summer, at the end of autumn? What is it doing right now in the northwest or northeast? Trees are throwing away their leaves. That turns those leaves into one-use throwaways. So humans did not invent the one-use throwaway. The tree was one of the inventors of the one-use throwaway. And imagine throwing away 220,000 materialist objects. Doesn't that make you a consumerist and wasteful beyond belief?
But there's an interesting dichotomy there, though. It isn't a throwaway because the leaves then hit the ground and they will sit there looking like leaves for a number of weeks or a month or so until they start to break down, and then the rains come, and then those particles go down, and there is a certain element, and I'm going down this road you've created here,
Right,
and they exhibit a, I'm going to say, a form of self cannibalism,
right,
because they then take in, as the consumer, those particles that they dropped off that were once leaves, and the
right.
cycle begins again in the spring.
It's even richer than that. Remember,
Yes.
one of the two laws of science that I'm trying to defeat in
Hmm.
this book is the law of least effort. Nature always takes the shortest path between 2 points. And the trees, in throwing away the leaves, did not take the shortest path between 2 points. What
Ah.
happened was the leaves were consumed by the tree's neighbors, bacteria.
Hmm.
Those beasts from 3.5 billion to 4 billion years ago that were our ancestors, that
Yeah.
were the ancestors of you and me, they made a feast out of those leaves. Now, the previous kinds of trees had been thrifty and penny pinching, just like the law of least effort says they should be.
Hmm.
And they, to do photosynthesis, had put out needles, and those needles were thrifty. Why? Because when they finally fell off, for one thing, the tree kept them all year long. But when leaves did, or when needles did fall off, they they stayed the same. They weren't living anymore, but they kept their order. They kept their form. And that sounds nice and miserly, going along with the law of least effort, and should be favored. But no, when the trees started this massive consumerism and this massive display of waste, they kicked off what the scientists studying it called a major productivity revolution,
Ah.
because their leaves were eaten by the bacteria and turned into what we call topsoil. And the leaves were extremely important to the development of that topsoil. And without that topsoil, you and I will not have dinner tonight.
By the way, the tree short term violates that one law in regards to gravity. It's short term. Now, it may be hundreds of years,
Right,
but eventually gravity does win, because the tree eventually does reach its apex
right,
as as far as its age in that
right.
respect, and then gravity ultimately does win.
Which is a demonstration of the fact that nature itself uses consumerism and one-use throwaways, because death is universal to life. And
Ladies and
those
gentlemen, I have never had a conversation like this, but I swear to you, Howard, he's on to something, and it all depends upon your perspective. Now, it's funny how my brother and I were having this wonderful little conversation, and it leaned into the political, but he talked about the one-use bottles, the plastic bottles, and so on and
right.
so forth, and how we've never had that before. And I started racking my brains. Now, I didn't get to share this with him at the time, but I've pondered it over the last couple of years since we had that conversation. I'm going, no, as far as man is concerned, there has been a period, especially since the Industrial Revolution, where, and the first thought that came to my mind was those cardboard and metal oil cans that we would put the oil into our cars. That was a
Right.
single use item.
Yep.
And there were others like the milk carton,
Right.
and so on and so on and so on. So it's like
The
the
jar.
21st century is not guilty in that respect for one-use items. That's been
Right.
around, quite honestly, seriously, for centuries. And we
Right.
dig those up. The archaeologists dig those up, i.e., clay pots and those kinds of things. They've even found what, wine bottles that are thousands of years old. I'm not sure how good the wine is in them, But again, we're still talking about single use things down through the millennium. Long again, as you've stated before, long before man ever came on the scene. We're talking with Howard Bloom, and we're talking about the case of the sexual cosmos here on Tell Me Your Story. The website, if you are so inclined, and I hope you are, reclined, listening, and inclined thoughtfully to go to howardbloom.institute and check out the work that he is all about. Get a copy, whether it's a hardcover paperback or otherwise Audible. I'm actually going to go online to my Audible account and use one of my credits to
Well,
get that book.
Audible won't work yet. I'm just
Oh, oh,
going over the draft,
oh,
but
okay.
the book is available on Amazon.
All right, go to
That's where you
Amazon.
can get it. Right.
That's right. My book is there too, Choices 5 Steps for Life. So get his book. It's a great volume. You're going to want to. And by the way, who's that young lady on the front cover? Is that her name, Cosmos?
I went into a partnership with ChatGPT's visuals
Ah.
uh, developer or whatever it's called,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave it a bunch of keywords that I felt would epitomize the book, and it made that beautiful young woman.
So that is not a real human.
It's
That
made
is
by
an
artificial intelligence.
AI configuration. By the way, not long ago, I did an interview, Howard, with a gentleman who writes books, writes fiction, and he starts out. Our conversation started out, I should say, talking about AI, and I openly admitted I have a bias against AI. That's what I said at the beginning of that interview.
Right.
And then he told me how he uses AI. He says AI, at least in his process, is only used to create the first draft and nothing more. Everything else,
Right.
he goes in, he expands, contracts, edits, etc. And I began to have a better understanding of the tool that we call AI instead of the fear that is out there.
It's an
And
empowerer. It gives you and me new powers. And
yeah,
it does that with my books. Well, let me tell you one of the basic themes of the case of the sexual cosmos.
yes, please.
Um, the world of naturalists now gives us the impression that that nature is a harmony, and that we can reach a natural equilibrium, and that we are a cancer on the planet. We have been destroying this natural equilibrium. We have been destroying this harmony. Well, nature doesn't work that way, especially when it comes to life. We've been through the early universe and how at every step the universe goes up and creates something breathtakingly new, something you and I could never have predicted, like three quarks becoming a neutron, like an electron and a proton becoming an atom. These are violent shape shocks. Um, but when it comes to life, life is obstreperous, life is rebellious, life rebels against nature in every conceivable way. For example, in its anti-gravitational moves that
Hmm.
we've been talking about, those plants going 3 feet high. Before that, moss daring to go 2 inches high, which was an astonishing space program. And then trees going 170 feet high. Nature, it says in the book, nature loves those who oppose her most. Why? Because it's obstreperous, rebellious things like trees doing things that if we had been around in the day of plants 3 feet high, we would have said were an outrage, an absolute desecration of nature. Those desecrations of nature are her steps up, her paths to her next step up. And the universe is always, nature loves those who oppose her most. She loves her rebels because they take her to new heights.
Never thought of it that way. And I tell you, I think about, let's just say, our current situation in this country with what is referred to as the divide, the polarization and so forth. And what you've shared thus far in just a short, less than 50 minutes, has me looking at all of that that's been going on. Let's just keep it simple for the last 10 years as what Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was on this program, oh my goodness, she was on this program in 2007.
And she was a collaborator of mine.
Yeah. And she shared that we are going through, as she described it, what women go through when they have a baby. We're going through those birth pangs, and we're still going through it. And maybe it's a continual thing. Maybe nothing is really technically born, but the fact of the matter is that this is the process of the universe. Ergo, what's happening right now is actually, shall we say, fodder for what comes next.
Absolutely.
And that what comes next, I was almost going to say could be a good thing. No, it has nothing to do with good or bad. It's just what comes next, as
Right.
far as the universe is concerned, as far as Mother Nature is concerned, if you
Right.
will.
That's those steps up your stairs by the slinky when you run the slinky in reverse.
Hmm.
The universe is constantly trying to give birth to realities that are beyond your imagination and mine.
Right.
Um,
And it doesn't matter whether this side is right and that side's wrong, or vice versa. It's like there's this concept we talk about on this program quite often, in reference to raising the consciousness of the planet,
right,
and dealing with the people primarily, and their consciousness and their understanding of what's important and so forth.
right.
And I'm not necessarily throwing that concept out, mind you, but I'm starting to look at it differently as you are describing it, and that is that it it does and doesn't matter. I mean, maybe in the short term, in my lifespan, which I'm here for less than a puff of smoke, just like you. Mine so far has been puffing around for about 65 years, as the world, and you 82. Um, but again, in the grand scheme of things, because we're here for such a short time and we want to say, well, I just want to make sure that, I leave a legacy, that I leave the place better than it was. And it's like, well, who's to say it wasn't good before you got here and that it's necessarily better when you leave? It is what it is, right? I mean, it's again, I'm going back to that one phrase once again. It's a matter of perception. And when we
Well, not
start changing it,
entirely,
not entirely,
because
okay.
let's tell you a story. Once upon a time, there were lots of life forms,
Hmm.
lots and lots of life forms. There were billions of them over the course of time, but none of them had consciousness. They had my primitive brain. They had brains much smaller than our brain, maybe a quarter the size of our brain. They were smart enough to be able to socialize and find food, and keep themselves alive. Um, and puppies, your dog has a form of uh, primitive form of consciousness, but consciousness like the consciousness that we have, in which we have interlocked realizations. These grand scale. What? That's probably my girlfriend. Hang on.
No,
No,
feel
it's
free
my
to do that
assistant,
as
but
I
I
let our
can't take her
listeners
call
know
right now.
that this is
Okay.
Howard Bloom, and we're talking about his book. It is entitled The Case of the Sexual Cosmos, as we continue on Tell Me Your Story. Howard was interrupted there for just a moment, and now we're going to let him continue the story as we talk with him here on Tell Me Your Story. Tell us that story. Continue that, will
Well,
you
the
please?
kind of consciousness that we have is utterly unique. And we haven't found it anyplace else in the entire universe. And we've been hunting since 1975. Um, and no other animal, no other living thing has the kind of consciousness we do have, that knits together the wisdom of hundreds of generations, that knits together the inventions of hundreds of generations, the invention of speech, the thing we're using right now,
Mhm.
language. No other animal has that the way that we do. Other animals have noises that have interpretations, that have meanings, but we are the only ones to utter sentences and complete thoughts. That is new. In the same way that once upon a time, this was a lifeless planet, and the first bacteria who tried to grab hold of life and rebel against nature by bringing life to this planet, who were obstreperous, rebellious. Those first life forms brought something to this planet that was utterly new. It was a barren ball of stone, and all of a sudden it had life. So these jumps along the evolutionary ladder that is constantly moving up, that staircase of the slinky, in which the slinky is constantly going up, are shocking, unbelievable, astonishing, and that's the way the universe seems to like it. We are tools for the universe to create her next astonishment, to create her next rebellion, to create her next supersized surprise. That's what you and I are here for, at least in the opinion it took me 80 years or 75 years to develop in the case of the sexual cosmos.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me to talk with you. We aren't that far apart in age. All right, someone said, "Well, you're 65 and
17 years, I
he's
think it
almost,
is.
yeah, exactly." And yet there is a a curiosity within me that feels very comfortable and almost in sync with what you are talking about. I'm not saying that I'm 100% in agreement with everything that the man says, because how boring would that be if we all believed the same things? But it's fascinating when I start to see, you have little bits and pieces that help me to build the puzzle piece that goes into my big puzzle, shall we say, the big picture, or at least
Right,
the big picture in my life. In my life,
right,
I don't know that my mother even cares about anything that we're talking about, although I will tell you that my mother did send me a review of my book when I sent her a copy around her birthday last year, and she sent me a text basically with a little advice as far as the book, but also she says congratulations on publishing your book, and then said, I learned things about you I always wanted to know.
aha,
And I thought, okay, that's a good thing,
right,
because I don't know. You are very open with who you are in your life. Oh, well, obviously, people watch your documentary. Yeah, he's doing his plank vibrations there in his underwear.
right.
I don't know how much more vulnerable you can get there, but you don't feel uncomfortable. I don't want to say that you feel comfortable, but you don't feel uncomfortable in sharing what is so about Howard Bloom's life.
Well, you know that I did 20 years of field work in mass behavior in a subject I knew nothing about originally. I dove into a culture I knew nothing about, popular culture, and I built the biggest PR firm in the music industry. And I worked with Michael Jackson, Prince, Bob Marley, Bette Midler, AC/DC, Aerosmith, Kiss, Queen, Billy Joel, Billy Idol, Paul Simon, etc. A whole bunch of lists of people. And now I forget why I was bringing that up. I had a point to make
About being vulnerable.
about being vulnerable. So, at any rate, what I learned about that industry was that my job was not a job having to do with selling pieces of plastic. It was a job about human soul. That when my artists made phenomenal music, and they did make phenomenal music, all of them, that was a direct connection from their soul to yours. And though I am a scientist, the phenomena of human soul, the phenomena of that kind of connection, the phenomena of what happens at a rock concert when people forget who they are and all become part of a crowd and have an ecstatic experience, an out of body experience almost, for 60 or 70 minutes, when they have a transcendent experience. That is part of the natural world. And that has to be part of what I study. So my study, very strangely, of science, which starts with things like a Big Bang and the first quarks, ends up with the mystery of the beyond metaphysics human experience,
Hmm.
that ecstatic experience. That too is a part of nature, and that too is a part of what I have to study.
And I will tell you that the consternation I had at one of those concerts, well, I don't think it was a rock concert classified as such. My first wife bought me a pair of tickets, and of course, I took her with me to a concert in Sun City West, Arizona. I think it was the Sun Dome, where one of my favorite artists was performing, Dan Fogelberg. And
Ah, yes.
I wanted to sing along like everybody does. Everybody
Right.
gets to sing along,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I'm not singing full volume,
Right.
but I got hushed. I got shushed.
Who shushed you?
Oh, people around us.
That's
And apparently it
amazing.
must have been loud enough to where it was not
Right. Well, you have
appreciated.
to sit in the first 15 rows and be
Exactly.
among all the people who are doing exactly that, singing
Well,
every word.
and I attended John Denver's concert in 2000, in
And he was a client
1981.
of mine.
Yeah, he was what now?
He was a client of mine.
Oh, and he put out, I'm still listening to his music. I use the lyrics of his songs to describe some of the things that I talk about on this program and even what my guests talk about because it's still as poignant and salient today as it was when those songs were written, whether they were
I,
written by him or not.
they were written by him, and I agree with you. And seeing him in concert was an astonishing experience.
Yeah. Well,
He
I
was
was up in the
amazing.
nosebleed section in the big cake. Okay, in the big cake building at Arizona
Right,
State University. But I'm grateful that I was able to go there. The only one I wasn't able to see a concert of was Harry Chapin, and I was not happy when my brother gave me the news. He came into the living room while I'm watching TV and said, "Oh, hey, did you know Harry Chapin died?" I said, "No, he didn't. Go away," and found out, of course, that he had.
right.
And of course, I've been following the not just the lyrics, but the stories of the Edmund Fitzgerald and Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, yes.
And so when you talk about their soul meeting and communing, if you will, through the music with my soul. Oh man, I couldn't agree with you more.
And the bottom line to all of this, we humans are not a cancer on the planet.
No,
And if we
no.
want a paradise, it's our job to make one. And we've got to stop this doomy thinking,
Yeah.
thinking that the world is coming to an end and it's all our fault and it's because of the sins of technology and industrialism. No, 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 no. If you want a paradise, it's your job to make it. And if you take yourself out of the game, your civilization, you're taking your civilization out of the game.
Yeah.
And you're taking out of the game the only civilization on the face of the planet that has ever invented things like an anti slavery movement, an anti imperialist movement, a peace movement. No other civilization has ever done that. And you want to kill our civilization because you want to sit around pissing and moaning about how humans are the cancer of the planet and are killing the planet itself. I'm sorry, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. You have to read this book and you have to start aspiring, as nature orders you to do, to that next unbelievable staircase up because
Yeah.
you are part of the slinky.
I was just gonna say we are the slinky, and the slinky is
Yes.
us.
Yeah, exactly.
And to that end, there are two individuals that I have seen a video of. One of them is George Carlin, and one of his bits had exactly the same statement, elongated, of course, and
Right.
humorously presented,
Right.
that you just stated that the planet does not need our help.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And then the other one was a more modern individual, Greg Braden. I saw a video of his, and he was, and again, we're not even going into the political realm here, folks. Greg Braden went through the same thing. They took a look at some of the, those ice core samples, and
Right.
he was talking about those and a bunch of other scientific facts that basically said there's no crisis, this is just the way that it is. Now,
Right.
I will add this part. All right. I agree with you, and I will stand with you from the standpoint that we need to stop this thing. But what I will add to it is I won't even talk to someone who wants to talk climate change as far as the science. I don't want to talk about the science. Here's the only statement I'm going to give you. We need to clean up our home for no other reason than we need to clean up our home. I mean, you clean your apartment, don't you? Or you at least
Right.
have somebody come in to do so. Why? Why do you do that?
Right,
because it's a lot nicer to live in a clean place than a dirty place.
right.
So let's clean up our little area. We're not
And
talking about you going up and down a coastline and with a little spiky thing and a metal detector to pick all the stuff up. No,
right,
little wherever it is that you live, do your
right,
little part. Just that's all you have to do.
right.
You know.
And realize that according to science, this is a planet of greenhouses and ice houses,
That's
and
right.
they come in succession. And we, at the 11,000 year mark since the last ice age, are overdue for either the next global warming. And believe me, when nature does a global warming, it looks what we call global warming puny, pitiful. So we are overdue for the next great global warming or the next great ice age.
Right.
And if taking carbon out of the atmosphere to remove our contribution, which is small compared to nature's contribution, if
Yeah.
that works, that's great. Why? Because we need to develop climate stabilization technologies. If
Yeah.
we want the planet to be the way it was in 1650, fine. That's an anthropogenic way of thinking, but fine. But you need to learn climate stabilization technologies on a big scale because that next ice age and or that next global warming of astonishing proportions is just around the corner.
Yeah. Well, extraordinary conversation. We're not done with it because we're going to have you back again
That's wonderful.
as long as you are still breathing and sentient and conscious,
And
especially
still able to do a pseudo push-up.
that's right, a pseudo push-up. I still like the vibratory plank exercise. I like that.
Then
Howard Bloom has just invented a new exercise, ladies and gentlemen. Go see what's the name of that
it's the
documentary?
grand unified theory of Howard Bloom.
There you go. The Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom. Don't forget about the book, the case for the case of
It's
the
the case of
sexual
the sexual
cosmos.
cosmos. Everything you know about nature is wrong. Available on Amazon.
Amazon. And the Audible coming soon, we hope.
Yeah, soon we hope.
All right. Well, say, hey, I got three final questions that I want to ask you. I've asked you twice before, but
Right,
sometimes the answers change, and that's
right,
okay. But
right.
before I ask those questions of you, Howard, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story: New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at richarddugan.com. And we are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and you can watch these conversations on YouTube. We hope you'll subscribe as well as click notification. Go to Amazon not only for Howard's book, the case of the sexual cosmos, but also my book, Choices: 5 Steps for Life, in Audible, hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. And we also hope that you can leave us a tip. Our tip jar is called PayPal. And there are links on richarddugan.com, the homepage, to both Amazon and PayPal. And we also ask that you take some time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and we hope that you will spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice. I'll bet you, Howard, that would be a conversation that would take a couple of hours in and of itself, wouldn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, with all of that, we're going to go to Howard and ask of the three final questions that we ask all of our guests. The first of which, of course, is who's Howard Bloom?
Good question. Howard Bloom is a ripple in the constant stream of the cosmos, a whirl, a little dance circling around in this stream. But Howard Bloom is here to make somehow the downstream that comes from my little whirl a little bit better.
What gets you up in the morning, Howard, besides the vibratory plank?
Well, I have two more books left to write. I was raised by books the way Mowgli was raised by wolves. I used to read two of them a day from the time I was 10 to the time I was 14. And then I had to pay attention in school. So I couldn't do that anymore. But but those books saved me. So
Mm.
my job is to write books, and what keeps me alive is that kid 350 years down the line who's as confused as I am and needs a source of meaning in life.
And finally, what was your best day?
Oh my God. My best day was Louisville, Kentucky in, I think it was 2010, when the whole city threw an event based on my book, Global Brain. And I forget the name of the singer they brought in to perform. She's famous today. And then they had me with the midday newscaster from PBS quizzing me, and I was surprised by the direction she took. She took me through the course of my life, complete with all of the major impediments that I've been tossed and that I've climbed over triumphantly. And when we finished, the audience, 500 black high school students, raised to stood on their feet, up on their feet, raised themselves to their feet, I think is the phrase I'm looking for, and gave us a standing ovation. And it was absolutely wonderful.
Well, so was this conversation. Wonderful to talk with you again. And we will be talking with you again in 2026 and beyond, as long as, again, we can keep to get a hold of you. Because if I have to contact one of my intuitives to connect with you from the other side, I will do that. You know that. I will do that.
Or you can contact me through my girlfriend who believes in the intuitives on the other side.
You got it. You got it. Howard, thank you once again for joining us. And thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love Talal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And finally, to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.